and welcome to See Hear Love. I'm your host, Melinda Estabrooks, and we're so glad that you've joined us today for a topic that is close to our hearts and also to the more than 460,000 families that it impacts, because that's how many step families or blended families live in Canada, according to Stats Canada in 2016. Wow. Well, with that number also comes this number, 567,270 children, or 9.8% of all children aged 0 to 14 years are living in a step family in Canada today. That's 1 in 10, which means that there are a lot of adjustments and challenges, good and bad, that go along with these statistics for blended families and marriages. So this is a great topic because I know it impacts us personally. And so to share our thoughts and wisdom and experience, I've got Jen and Kim and Cheryl here. Welcome, you guys. Beautiful co-hosts. And we'll also hear from Ron L. Deal, the Director of Blended Family Ministries at Family Life. He's the author of The Smart Stepmom and The Smart Step Family Marriage. And I'm there on location in Edmonton for an interview with him while he gives us tips on how to be great stepmoms and how to get on the same page as your husband while parenting in a blended family. I don't even think that's blended. I think that's just overall. Let's get on the same page as your husband. And without further ado, you can't miss this woman right here, our special guest in studio, Elizabeth Pierce. She's a wife, mother of 2, and a clinical social worker by profession. Elizabeth also grew up in a blended family and has a lot of advice and thoughts to share about our topic, so we're so glad that you're here.
Yes. Thank you very much. We need it.
So, I mean, we need this, obviously, for us. We're in, this experience right now as a blended family. But for you, this is going to be an interesting perspective because you actually grew up in a blended family.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that, because I think, we're the moms, and so we kind of see it from this angle and level, but you're actually seeing it from a different level. So how did it come to be, and maybe give us some tips or learnings on what worked and didn't in your own blended family?
Okay, so I entered into a blended family when I was 5 years of age. My dad died when I was 3.5, and my stepdad's wife died when his kids were 3 and 6. And so my parents met at Joy Bible Camp, actually, and got married, and we became a blended family of 4 children. So
wow.
Wow. Yeah, so we were younger, I think, which I think sometimes the blended family depends on what age your kids are as to whether or not it goes well, or, it's a big kind of blow up that happens. But for us, I think we were bringing together all kinds of different things, right? Because there had also been some trauma that had incurred when my dad died and when my step family's mother died. So sometimes I think when blended families happen, you sort of get thrown together and you don't have time to necessarily talk through what are your ideas, what are your expectations, what are you hoping for, and then afterward you're like, whoa, why is this so chaotic? Why are there so many problems? This is supposed to be good. We're supposed to be coming together. So communication, I think, would be the thing that I would say we learned was most important, because we all had expectations coming into this, and they didn't all get met.
Right, because you're bringing in like 1 family, 2 families, even 3 or 4 with like the other extended families and cousins and the grandparents, family of origin. That's big.
That's right. I had 4 sets of grandparents. We had 4 family Christmases that we went to, right? So it was a big change from what we were used to. Yeah.
What do you feel? I mean, maybe I'll throw it out here. When you think of that number I said earlier, like that's how many children are in blended, families. There's over 460,000 blended families in Canada, and that's representing over 560,000 kids in a blended family. What are your thoughts about that? When you think that or hear that, what comes to mind for you about that number and the intricacies and the things that can happen in there?
I feel like that's an overwhelming number, actually, and I feel like what comes to mind is adjustment, lots of emotional healing that needs to happen, because obviously for there to be a blended family there has to be loss on some level, whether still living or past. And I feel like there's vulnerability there because, it's like you want blended families done right. I've heard stories of blended families not done right, and sort of the trauma and the scarring that leaves. So I feel like this show is so key.
Yeah.
so key what we're doing, because people need tools. They're really hands up in the air, like, how do I do this?
I agree. Yeah. We have at the agency that I work at, and there's so much of this, that whether it be reunification therapy that we're doing, or whether it be helping families learn how to live together and communicate with one another because there has been a divorce or a death in the family. And that's a huge number of the clients that we see coming for counseling, because it's not something that is intuitive. You know, you're used to doing stuff through your natural means of doing things. You have your own family norms, your own family way of doing life, and then you enter into this relationship with someone else who had their own family norms and their own way of doing life, and it doesn't always match with yours. So when I hear the statistic, I think there's a lot of people out there who are probably saying, how do I make this work? Because I know as a child, I really wanted to have a good relationship with my stepdad. I was desperate for that, because I was a young girl looking for a daddy because I'd lost mine, right? So how do you navigate that well? And there's so many families saying, I want this to go well, but I don't know how to make it happen.
That's a big number. But what it tells me, that's a lot of kids needing to feel loved and cared for, and that they belong.
Absolutely.
Like, that's all I feel. It's like all these hearts, no matter their age, wanting to know that I'm still loved and I belong.
The place.
Yeah. That's what I think when
I have so
many
questions.
Sorry, Jen,
I know.
what about you?
Yeah, no, and just how that works, because with 400 and some thousand families, that's 400 and some thousand people who are living different ways. Like, I mean, until I blended, I kind of thought all families ran like mine. So, right, like money and parenting and rules and regulation. I just figured everyone did what I did, and well, they don't. So
It's true.
Things that maybe one wants to clarify before the wedding.
Absolutely.
That's a good segue in. That's a good segue in, because I was just going to ask Elizabeth, how do you prepare? So here's the thing: for you see that number of blended families, and also in our age and stage, there's a lot of people that are remarrying again. So how do you prepare these two families to come? Because it's not just about, oh, I love him and everything's going to work out, and people have tried that and it has not worked.
Absolutely.
Because you got all of that. So how do you, before you get married, prepare to say, okay, we're coming into blended family, how do we do this well right off the bat?
I actually think that it's very similar to how you prepare to get married, period. You have to talk ahead of time about what your expectations are, what your beliefs are, what things matter to you, what traditions are important for you to continue once you're together as a family unit. The difference in this case is you have to have those discussions with the children that are going to be brought into the family as well. So when you're talking with your children about, we're going to be getting into this situation and we're going to be together as a family, what things have we been doing that are really important to you that we continue to do? And what things will we maybe need to try to do a little bit differently so we can figure out how to have a new way of doing things also. Like, those conversations need to happen with children so they feel actually a part of things, so they feel like they belong, like you're saying, right? If they don't feel like they have a voice, if they don't feel like what's valuable to them is going to be honored when they enter into the new family, you're going to end up with a lot of resistance, right?
So some people don't want to involve their kids in these big decisions in that way. But you're saying you need to bring all the family members and kids in this.
So I'm not saying that the children get all of the say.
Right.
I can just hear people reacting. I'm not one of those. But their voice matters. I mean, they're a part of the family, right? So I think gone are the days of the sort of autocratic, do as I say, not as I do, children are to be seen and not heard kind of thing. And now we're saying, you're actually a human being and your feelings and your opinions matter, so tell me about it. You might still not get what you want, but that doesn't mean you don't still have a right to express what you think and how you feel. Right?
So, okay, buzzing. Honor hit me like a ton of bricks. How do you honor, because it's not just two families coming together, two cultures, maybe traditions, ways of doing things, it's just a whole way of being.
Absolutely.
How do you honor the existing family? Let's just say that everyone is still alive. How do you honor the parents that are not sort of there in the everyday, the traditions, the ways of doing things, while creating new ways of being without feeling like you're dishonoring them? And then how do you honor the kids' feelings where they're like, okay, you're not my dad and you're still working through that, and this is the way I do it here. Okay, how do you navigate that so that everyone feels honored in the process?
Ooh, big question.
Right?
Yeah. That's
Like,
no.
this
All of
easy.
us. I would say all of us are like, yeah, it's a great question.
You probably felt dishonored
Yeah.
at some point,
Yeah,
right?
that is.
Absolutely. So there's no quick, easy answer, because if there was, then no one would have this struggle, right? So in no way do I suggest that this is a pat answer, quick fix kind of thing. But I do think that even just by having the conversation about what matters to you as a child, what things are important, that you're actually conferring honor on them, because you're saying your voice, your opinion, your experience, your values actually matter. I think when you recognize and respect that there is another parent involved in situations where it's perhaps a divorce, even if you don't like that other person, they're still part of the child. So it's so important.
Repeat that again. Just if you don't like the person, you still have to.
You have to
Respect them, because they are part of that child, right? And if you're rejecting that person, the child is going to feel like you're rejecting a part of them, because the child gets that they're a part of them. So it's so important that you don't have to say you like them or even but you can say things like you really respect and support that they are your dad or that they are your mom, without saying I love them or I love how they're treating you, or you don't have to say any of that at all, but you can certainly respect that they are part of the equation, and they always will be. Even if they're dead, they're still part of the equation.
That's good.
That's
right?
Yeah, that's good. Jen, Kim, talk to us about what are some of maybe one or two the hardest challenges of being, a stepmom. And again, I want to honor that it's the kid's story and your family story. So I want to honor that. So what you can say, but what would you say are some of the challenges or things that you didn't expect when you got into a blended family?
For me, it was actually some of the little things, and it's kind of family traditions. Like I remember the first, Christmas, and my husband was like, well, everyone knows on Christmas Eve you watched Scrooge and you have appetizers. And I'm like, what? No, you don't.
As everyone does that.
You watch It's a Wonderful Life and you have Chinese food.
I hear you on the Chinese
Chinese. And I'm like, Elf. We watch Elf.
And it's just, but you don't think when you're dating to negotiate the movie.
That's right.
But I find those are the things that kids dig into, like the big things, the big life things. Kids seem to be pretty malleable in some ways. They're more flexible than adults, I find. But it's those little, it's the childhood traditions, how we summer, whenever we stay at a hotel, we always order room service. Right. Well, they think that's crazy. Why would you do that? So, it's kind of little traditions. And by getting rid of the tradition, people do feel dishonored. And so it's trying to honor all the traditions.
Family rituals are a lot like if you think about a life rope, and if the rope is just straight down and you're cascading down the side of a cliff, and the rope has no knots on it, your hands are just going to slide down. Family rituals are like knots along that rope. They're things that you can hold on to that give you a sense of stability, that help you feel like you have some control and some sense of orienting of yourself to what's happening, even if you still feel like you're in a bit of a free fall. And I would say for children entering into a blended family situation, they do feel like they're in a bit of a free fall. They need those knots on the rope, and if you tell them that knot isn't needed anymore, it's going to make them feel like they're falling. That's right. Absolutely.
3 tips for us. I say this because there's so much. The show could be like hours, but as stepmoms in blended families, what would you say would be the top 3 tips just for us to remember as we kind of navigate through? As Jen was saying, those little things that you're like, oh, I thought everybody did that. Chinese food, But I think even for me, I'm going into my 2nd year, and there's been highs and lows and great joy and a lot of just having to work out about having families and honoring both sides. And, I think the challenge of, from different values to different ways we parent, all those things. And so it's hard. It really is. I think, for people who say that going to blended family isn't hard,
no, it's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
And we love, this new season, but it's really hard. So what would you say would be, 3 just good tips for us to encourage us in this?
So I feel like a broken record, but I would start with communicate. Have open and honest dialogues with the people in your life that are affected by the blended family, the children, the partner that you're with, the extended family of the people that are involved, because all of those things and understanding through communicating, listening, and sharing is going to enable you to have a better sense of where to put your feet as you sort of take steps forward in the blended family situation. And you're saying, so you find that that's helpful? The other thing I would say is that holding on to that idea that it's really important to honor and respect the other parent, whether or not they're alive or dead. Because I can tell you in my family situation, even though my dad was dead, it didn't change the fact that he was my dad. And that was always honored by my stepdad. I never actually called him my stepdad. I always called him just my dad. But he always honored that. So I never felt a need to defend or stake, you know, a territorial claim like you're not my dad. I never felt like that because he always communicated that he got that. So I would say that would be an important piece. And then the third thing I would say is to just sort of surrender, sort of lay down expectations and just take the good with your eyes wide open and accept that there's no way this is going to go perfectly, but that's not on you. It's just because it's a messy situation, but it doesn't mean it can't be amazing.
I find
it's good.
that if you just, so I entered a blended family. I have 2 stepsons that are older, like 22 and 18. So that's different, right? And I just find I'm not their mom. I'm not going to parent them. I disciplined my kids very differently than the way my husband disciplined. They just had different scenarios. But if you just love them, and love them, and love them, and consistently love them, and hug them, and tell them you love them, I adore them. I love them. That eventually they just see that consistency in you and Jesus in you.
Absolutely.
They're watching and seeing, oh, she does love me. Consistently loving them. In time, takes a little bit of time.
Absolutely.
But that does a whole lot too.
I agree.
And I like that. So I just wanted, because I have to say it over and over again. Communicate, right? Honor, and then your third one was surrender.
Surrender is huge.
That's really, really good. I think that's a really key things to think about as we go.
Surrender is just hitting me really hard. Because when I think about, I just had this analogy of us desperately holding on to a pen, a certain pen, the way it looks, its shape, because that's what we know. And then someone else coming into a relationship and they're like, well, this is, like you said, this is my pen, and that's my pen. And what God is saying in this conversation is, both of you, put your pens down. I have a new pen. And you're like, are you sure? Trust me. It's a new pen. And we're so afraid to sort of let God write the new chapter, because holding on to the old feels familiar and it's kind of tethering. But there's nothing wrong with creating new memories, new traditions, new community.
And you need
it's a good one, surrendering.
You need
beautiful.
to.
And I think too, for me, it was just the sense of I didn't want to be in any kind of competition. Like you come in and, you know, now I have, you know, a new husband, but he was, you know, married to her and all of that. And sometimes as a woman, you start getting in your head and thinking about all kinds of stuff and comparing, and then you get like really uptight, and then you start reacting out of that place of fear. And so that was a really big one, because you start reacting and the kids feel it, and then, you know, Chris felt it, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second, what am I doing?
Trying too hard. And you're like, this is not me. What am I doing?
I need to relax and just be myself and love the kids. But there was all of this other dynamic that was going that I was trying to project and manage, and it was not working. And I think I had to give myself a bit of grace, because, you know, you're not going to do it perfect, you know, and it was my first sort of like time into being a parent, you know, because I don't have kids from, you know, my other marriage, and so it was a big thing.
Well, I have a question for all four of you. All 4 of you now. In the interview seat. Discipline. Just talking about discipline. How in the world, with 2 sort of ways of being, did you guys?
My conversation was that went to Chris, like as far as that, and so I let him, like, you know, discipline. But as we have time, you know, has come, he has now said, you know, Melinda as well. And what was great is when he stood beside me, he said, when Melinda, I support Melinda. So Melinda does say this, you know, you need to listen. Now, you know, I've known them for, I've known them for, you know, a number of years, so they knew that. But it was really important for Chris to stand beside me and say that. Look, I'm your dad, and I've always been doing the discipline, but, you know, we're in a place now where I trust Melinda, you love her, so she is now as well going to be the one. It was big though, because I didn't say anything for a while, and then I would be like, ugh, because I wanted to say something.
How about you guys?
Again, ours are older teenagers. I don't discipline his boys. He doesn't discipline mine. I was a single mom for 8 years. Like, my kids and I have this way, but they love him so much too. Like, my son will go to Brian and ask for advice and stuff. And Serena, like, they will go to him on their own. But we each, if there's something to deal with, we'll talk about it ourselves. How do you think I should, you know? But then we go and separately deal with it.
Yeah, we have similar kind of age and situations because I was also a single mom for 8 years. So, and again, like my little ones, I'm sort of do the discipline. My husband's kids are older, so that's not so much an issue. And I think because I was divorced, my husband's a widower, I had already pre-established different discipline in different homes because my kids go back and forth to their dad. So that was already something that we had discussed, is that sometimes discipline looks different in different situations. So, you know, we were kind of lucky that by the time I blended, I think some of the discipline stuff had been pre-established.
That's good. But you talked about it, right? Which I think is so crucial. I was actually thinking about, as you were speaking, that in some respects, the step parent, if they sort of think of themselves as not necessarily the same as a biological parent, but kind of more like a babysitter, in that your responsibility is to uphold the values of the home that you are in at the time to make sure that there's some consistency, but you're not the final authority necessarily, but there's still the expectation of the children that they listen to the babysitter. And I'm not saying that a step parent's a babysitter, please don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that idea of who holds it's going to be natural for the natural biological children to see their biological parent as the one with the authority, right? But with there's still the need for them to listen. When the step parent says, hang up your coat, you have to listen and hang up your coat, whether they're your biological parent or your not biological parent, because that's just being respectful.
And you know what's good for them to see is that you love their parent
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
You love
really
their parent
point.
well.
Yeah. That's good. Well, we need to go to Edmonton now. There's lots of discussion because I sat down with Ron Deal, Director of Blended Family Ministries at Family Life. He's the author of The Smart Stepmom and The Smart Step Family Marriage. And he shared with me more tips on how to be a great stepmom and how to get on the same page as your husband while parenting in a blended family. And when we come back from Ron Deal's interview, we'll discuss a verse that we know will encourage you as you lead and parent in your blended family. Take a look.
One of the things I want to always say to people is, hey, here's your hope. It's in the longevity of working and moving forward. We like to say you cook a step family in a crock pot, not in a blender.
Oh, that's a good one. In a crock pot, like long and simmering on low.
You got it. You got it. Blenders have blades, by the way. Somebody's going to get hurt. We don't want to do that. But crock pots work with time. And all the ingredients will soften, but notice they don't all soften at the same time, and they don't all share of themselves in the same manner, but they all get there. There's no guarantee that everybody in a blended family is going to get there, but with time it tends to happen. Average step family needs about 5, 6, 7 years to really find their mojo. And so there are lots of questions about logistics, and the merging process takes on average 5 to 7 years. So what that means is, you're probably doing great. Like, it's not instant, but it's not supposed to be. That's what blenders are. Crock pots work really slowly. So the other thing that allows you to do is relax a little bit and say, what's good for us today? And let's enjoy what's good. Yes, we're clearly working on what's not what we want it to be, but we don't have to force a blend. We don't have to create pressure. Here's a funny. Sometimes bio parents get mad at their kid for not enjoying or liking or honoring or wanting to love the step parent. Do you think anger helps a child soften? No. So when the biological parent relaxes and says, I don't have to make them love you. I do want them to be respectful and courteous and kind. That you can insist on. But love, that's up to the child. So we're going to trust that hanging around each other, spending time together, merging our family traditions, and over time figuring out how we do vacation. And eventually that process will move us closer into relationship. And I think that takes some of the pressure off.
I so appreciate Ron's thoughts and expertise on the subject. I think you guys did too. The tips and everything else were so great. Elizabeth, you brought a verse with us, to us, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. I know Cheryl's going to read it, but this is a verse that you say is going to help those in blended families. So we'll read it, and then let's end the show with some of your thoughts and some takeaways that we as sort of stepmoms can be encouraged by as we go.
So we're reading from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 in the New Life app. Hopefully you're tracking with us at home. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all that you do, and he will show you which path.
Oh, it's such a good one.
So good.
Very good one.
Yeah. So you asked me for my 3 top tips or whatever on it, and those are all sort of practical human level things. But as far as I'm concerned, those have to be built on this, which is that navigating this in a way that's going to be as effective as possible means that you're not navigating it as a step parent, or it's that you're committing it to the Lord and you're asking Him to come and through His Holy Spirit to give you the wisdom and the guidance and the direction to be able to understand, how do I take these steps? What do I do in this situation? Help me with my emotional reaction that I'm feeling right now. You know, give me clarity, give me your eyes to see. And then He opens up the path that you're supposed to take, because there's nothing about this that's easy, and so we're not meant to do stuff without Him. We have the Holy Spirit in us to help us, and this is one of the things He's there to help us with.
It's hard to trust in the Lord, isn't it?
It can be.
Especially when it comes to kids, and especially when it comes to this, right?
It's true.
But there's that promise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, promise.
So the takeaways as we go, because I mean, you did that with the verse, but again, when you said, you know, we communicate, you know, we honor and we surrender, those are good. But in any practical ways, if there are, you know, women and men who are just out, like you know, was it a mistake that I got married again? This is really hard. I didn't realize how hard this is. What would you say?
So first of all, I'd say, yeah, it's hard. You're right. That doesn't mean you're failing. It just means that you're actually in it for the long haul, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be so upset by the fact that it's hard right now. It actually demonstrates how interested you are in this being successful, which, so good on you. Because if you didn't really care, you'd be like, whatever. But the fact that you're upset means you really care. I would also say, offer yourself grace. Right?
Yes.
We're so good at being hard on ourselves and expecting perfection of ourselves and expecting ourselves to have it all together all the time. So if I could add number 4 to that, you know, the tips, it would be full of grace towards yourself, towards your partner that is the, you know, biological parent of those children, towards the other parent of those children, towards the children. Just be full of grace. Respond with grace to yourself and to them, because if you do that, you'll find yourself in a really good space, even if it's hard.
You know, you said a lot, Elizabeth, it's for blended families, but it's for families everywhere.
Yes, true.
Because I think every mama can say, I need to extend, I mean, I'm getting a little teary about just extending grace. Because I want things perfect, and I want things exactly the way it should be, and I want the kids to know Jesus and live it out and be amazing, and then there are times where it doesn't happen. And it's really hard, and then you take it as a personal failure. Like you do, and you carry that.
Welcome to motherhood.
You know, and you know what I hear, just for you, Mel, just you're touching my heart. Just to paraphrase from the Bible, where it says, love covers a multitude of sins.
Amen.
In this case, love covers a multitude of mistakes, wrong choices. Just be okay and know that God is, just love. I love that. Love the parents, love the kids through it. Love yourself, because you can beat yourself up, I'll tell you.
Sure can.
That's good.
If you look at it through Jesus' eyes, right? Give me your eyes to see.
Oh, give me your eyes to see. I think I need that, like, as I walk out the door, when they open up the refrigerator door and leave all the air coming out, have your eyes.
Or the shoes at the front.
Or the shoes.
Love them through it.
Love them through it. I think that's it. So one more time, we are going to communicate, we are going to honor, we are going to surrender, and then we are going to be full of grace.
And love.
And love. Love. Thank you so much.
That was
There's so much more. We are going to be vlogging and
much.
blogging on this, you know, that this conversation can't stop. But just so appreciate just your gentleness and thoughtfulness through this, Elizabeth. I think just hearing that, I feel like this weight has come off me, just because I think, you know, lots of grace for all moms all over the world. So thank you. Cheryl, Jen, Kim, thank you also for your thoughts and for being great moms. You know, we're all moms, and it's...
I know, you're really
we're all moms, and
we gotta wrap it up.
Yeah, we gotta wrap this up. Woo! So thank you, and again, thank you, Elizabeth, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And to you, our viewers, we hope you were encouraged by our conversation today. The blended families are diverse, filled with different stories and situations, with different personalities and families of origin. And as Ron Aldeel shared with me, it takes 5 to 7 years for a blended family to really find its rhythm. So be patient. Give yourself lots of grace. Take deep breaths. Pray a whole lot. Give your spouse much grace, and give your kids a lot of grace. Be patient, kind, and strong. And God will help you. And just like our verse in Proverbs, trust Him and He will direct your path, your blended family path. Well, we love you. Make sure you connect with us on seeherlove.com, Facebook, and Instagram for resources, questions, and prayer. We're cheering you on in your motherhood. And always remember, as a step parent navigating these challenging but beautiful waters, you are seen, heard, and you are deeply, deeply loved by God. Bye-bye.